Happy Friday, everyone. The last Friday of Black History Month. And I dare not have us to not acknowledge and celebrate that we have been, for the past several weeks during this month, really leaning into Black History Month. So I do want to express my gratitude for all the ways in which you've shown up for Black History Month. I've been seeing a lot of people share different Black authors, Black business owners. And so my reminder is that while this is the last Friday of Black History Month, this is not the last time that we need to be celebrating all of the great contributions that Black individuals provide to our society. Welcome, everyone. If you're just getting here, I would like to welcome you to the Intentional Conversations VodCast, where we intersect conversations of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leadership and business. We've been expecting you, and we're so glad you're here. If you would, please go to the chat and let us know where you are joining the conversation from today. It is always a treat for us to see the many different geographies that are represented across this podcast community. We have folks all across the U.S., including folks that even join us from global markets, and that truly excites us. We know that you could be anywhere during this hour, but we're so grateful that you see fit to spend it with us. I see Kentucky is represented. Moorhead, Kentucky, welcome. And by the way, I am joining from Greenville, South Carolina, which is the home base of NWC. Our organization is 100% remote, not because of the pandemic, but that's been our business model since inception. Our clients are all over, and so our colleagues are all over, and that business model really serves us well. Welcome, Seattle, Washington. We're glad you're here. We have Charlotte, North Carolina that's represented here today. Detroit, I see you. You're in the house. Fantastic. I do want to let you know that cameras today, for those that are part of our Zoom community, they are encouraged, but certainly not required. We know that many individuals will join us in an auditory capacity, and we're glad you're here in whatever capacity. And we want you to enjoy the show and be very comfortable. We have also made available closed caption. That is our way at NWC showing up for disability inclusion. So for those who may need it, we want you to be aware that that is available to you. Today, we're going to be leveraging the chat as much as we can, or the comment section for those of us who are joining us LinkedIn Live. We're paying close attention to the comments there, and we're bringing them into the conversations here in our Zoom chat community. But that is a way for us to get proximate to each other in this virtual learning experience as we learn with and from each other. So use the chat. Share your LinkedIn information if you feel inclined for those in this community to connect with you beyond this hour of time. And I certainly would love the opportunity to connect with each and every one of you. So my team will place into the chat in the comment section of LinkedIn my information, and I would love for you to reach out. Again, welcome to Intentional Conversations VodCast. I'm Dr. Nika White. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am your host, and we're so glad you're here. Let the conversations begin indeed, and that is precisely what we are about to do. If you're just tuning in, this is Intentional Conversations VodCast, and we're so glad that you're here. I want to shout out the NWC team. They work tirelessly behind the scenes every single week for the past 4+ years, helping us to bring this virtual experience to each of you so that you can deepen your knowledge and understanding of all things diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. And I would be remiss if I didn't continue to share, because we are still in the month of February, that this is the month that we recognize our 7th year anniversary of being in business, making impact. And I don't take that lightly. I'm so grateful for all of the support. I do know that many businesses do not make it past 3 years. So the fact that as a Black woman founder, I can stand here before you and celebrate 7 years, that's no small feat. And I thank you all for celebrating with me. It is also still Black History Month, as I mentioned at the start. This is the last Friday of Black History Month, but nonetheless, we want to continue all of the great ideas and all of the efforts and affirmations that have been provided to so many different Black individuals, just to recognize our importance to society, our contributions to society. And so we are celebrating all year long, and I want to encourage you to do the same. Let's not just have the conversations during this month of February. Let's continue to amplify and lift up the Black community. I also have been expressing to each of you that we have done a thing here at NWC, and that is we spent some time pulling together a thought paper on DEI trends, particularly those trends that we see that are really top of mind for a lot of organizations in this calendar year of 2024. And so we want to make this available to each of you, and we have. It is on our website. We will place a link into the chat, into the comment section for those of you who desire to see this as a resource and to just be aware of what's going on and what needs to be on your mindset as you are helping to support your organizations around this body of work of DEI. I also would love to remind you that we have one LinkedIn learning course that's already out there. I think we have 18 and 19,000 learners when I look last. I'm so excited about that. But in this month, any day now, I have two new courses that are going to be launching, one of which is on the intersection of artificial intelligence and DEI. Really, really hot topic right now. You don't want to miss that. And the second one is all about accountability for leaders navigating diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I hope that you will partake of these resources and that you will share it with others in your network. And I appreciate the support. And speaking of LinkedIn, we have reached 25,000 followers. I don't take that lightly. I do put a lot of effort into my content. So I'm so grateful when people see fit to follow, to comment, to engage. And so thank you to all of you who are part of my LinkedIn community. Do appreciate that. For those of you who have enjoyed our vodcast and you think that there are others who would gain value from the content that we share during this hour, I want you to be aware that we do offer a podcast version of Intentional Conversations. Every week, we extract the audio, we make it available wherever you like to get your podcast. And so spread the word, let others know so that we can make sure we're expanding our community beyond those who are part of our vodcast community. Now, as I normally do, I want to give you just a little bit of heads up for what you have to look forward to in future weeks by way of our guest co-host. I'm always delighted when people say yes to our invitation, and I want to make sure that we are showing up so that they have an audience to speak to. And so here's what you have to look forward to. Comedy Wood is going to be kicking us off in March. And in that conversation, we're going to be discussing limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, compassion, toxic relationships, overcoming stress, anxiety, and feelings of being overwhelmed. So join us on March the 1st. And then following on the next Friday of March, on the 8th, we have Kelly George. And in that Intentional Conversations podcast, we're going to discuss what it feels like to be a newly published author, Kelly's work as a well-being and leadership coach, and she also specializes in supporting BIPOC neurodivergence, and how can coaching benefit everyone. I have a feeling that's going to come up in today's topic as well. And then in the next week of our Intentional Conversations, we have Janice Omadiki. And Janice is a rock star. She really, truly is. In that Intentional Conversations podcast, we're going to discuss her new book, which is called Mentorship Unlocked: Mental Health for Women and Entrepreneurs, Building Your Network of Mentors Authentically. And so I hope you will join us on the 15th of the month for Janice. Now, it does me great pleasure to provide a formal introduction to today's guest co-host. She is not a stranger to NWC. She is a friend. She is one of our consultant partners, and we are so grateful that she said yes to our invite. And I know that you're going to enjoy the rich insights that she will share. So if you're new to our podcast, you know that I always read the official bio because I think it's critically important for our community and audience to know all of the accolades, the credentials, the experience that our co-hosts show up to the conversation with. And so today will be no different. As a proactive and collaborative team expert, Dr. Julia Wiener has earned a reputation as an industry thought leader who is equally as analytical as she is visionary. Julia was co-owner of a manufacturing, distribution, and e-commerce company that has gained recognition in Inc. magazine's 2018 Top 5,000. They were ranked specifically 1,106 fastest growing private companies in America. She and her partners took the company from its inception to an international company that shipped tens of thousands of packages each month and employed over 300 people. They sold the firm to a Fortune 500 company in 2019. As the CEO of JW Strategies, Julia works collaboratively with executive management teams in driving leadership development strategies by designing and implementing programs that meet the needs of a diverse workforce. She focuses on organizational structuring, change management, cultural improvement, and executive coaching. Julia's personal profile is shaped by strong family values, a superior work ethic, and an integrity driven competitive nature that motivates her to exceed goals and energize those around her. As an instinctive leader, she reaps personal fulfillment by helping others tap into their inner excellence and aligning their personal growth with their company's short and long term business goals. Julia earned a bachelor's degree in business administration, an MBA, and a PhD in organizational leadership from Indiana Wesleyan University. She is currently pursuing an executive coaching certificate from Brown University. In addition to her professional achievements, Julia loves volunteering in church activities. She serves as the VP of the board of directors at Attitudes and Attire and a board member at Hope Clinic of McKinney, both local nonprofits that fulfill her passion for helping underserved communities and empowering women. She lives in Allen, Texas with her husband, 7-year-old daughter, 1-year-old son, and a son who lives in heaven. Dr. Julia, we're so glad you're here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And for those of you who have been a part of our podcast community for quite some time, you know what we do. We find those emojis, we find those words of affirmation, those words of welcome, and we will greet our guest co-host today with the warm, warm welcome. I'm going to add you to the spotlight. I cannot tell you how excited I am that you are here with us today. And before I release you, Dr. Julia, to greet this audience in your own way, we have a tradition here. And that tradition is to have our guest co-host to share with us something we would not know about them from reading or hearing their bio, as we just did, or from your LinkedIn profile. So this is an opportunity for you to share whatever that you feel like is going to help us to have just a little bit of insight into
Yeah.
Dr. Julia Wiener. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so grateful to be here. I thought long and hard about this. I've been looking at all of your podcasts up until this point, and I'm thinking, goodness, I mean, everything is out there, but there is one thing that people don't know about me unless they really know me, and that is that I am a self-professed tortilla chip connoisseur. I know all about the tortilla chips that are out there. Any brand that you want to bring at me, I know about it and I have tried it, and I have confidence that I know about the best tortilla chips. So Garden of Eden, Late July. If you guys know any other brands, please put them in the chat so I can go check them out. But those are I truly I have tortilla chip tastings with my friends that come over, just so we can make sure that I know the best ones. So I love it.
Okay, so we have a lot to get to, but I have to pause right here for a second. So I did not know that about you, friend, and I've been knowing you for years now,
Yes.
and I have to have an understanding of how did this fetish and this affinity to tortilla chips kind
Oh my
of come
gosh.
to be?
Oh my goodness, I love it. So I I love working out. I love staying fit and all of those things. But one of the things that comes with that is hunger. Like you're just so hungry after like a really
All the
big
time.
workout. Yes, all the time. And so I started kind of thinking, okay, what's something that's like kind of healthy, but then maybe tortilla chips aren't that bad as long as they're not covered in cheese and fat. But they're really not that bad. So it was a way for me to get like a savory, salty thing after a
Yep.
workout, and then I just started just like going deep into it. So sometimes I'll try a new one. I'm like, no, that's too salty. Done. This one's too crunchy. Done. And so yeah, I really get into it. I love it.
I'm so intrigued by this. I love it. I love it. I love a good salty snack too, but you have to watch that salt. So I totally
Yes.
understand. Well, great. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for sharing that little insight tidbit about yourself with our community. So I want to jump right in and I want to talk about your
Yeah.
journey, which of course, as I shared in your bio, it started with co-owning a manufacturing, distribution, and e-commerce company, and then becoming the CEO of JW Strategies. So I would love for you just to take this audience through a little bit of behind the scenes of that whole journey,
Sure.
because first of all, congratulations. That is no small feat to grow a company to that size and be able to sell it. I mean, that is big time. I know it's Black History, but I want to talk about not Black History, but what's happening like right now with the individuals that are walking around all of our communities all over. And so to me, that is Black History. There's not many people that can say that they have done that. So that's tremendous. But I would love for you to give us a little bit of insight into that journey, and then also specifically share some of the lessons that you learned along the way.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And Nika, again, just thank you so much for creating this space and this community. It's just I've been following this particular space for the last several months, but following you for years, and I'm just so grateful to be here with you. But yeah, I started in a corporate role back in Greenville, South Carolina, where I met Nika and where I'm from, and I, I was there at that company for about 10 years, a large Fortune 500 company. And there I learned a lot of great skills, a lot of great, communication skills, leadership skills, but nothing that quite, you know, got me to where I needed to be for entrepreneurship. That just comes from day to day, just like grit. You wrote about grit the other
Yes.
day, Nika.
Yes.
So yeah, just day to day, just that's where how I would say I got to that point. But to fine tune that a little bit, I started there, about 10 years, worked there. My husband and our partners decided they wanted to quit their corporate jobs and go off and start this business. And at the time, I was nervous. I was scared. I thought, no way, I'm staying in the comfort of I have insurance. I've got, I'm good. That is
Yes.
scary. And so I told my husband, look, you guys go out. I say I allowed, but he was going to do it anyway. I allowed him to leave, and I would take care of home. I would make sure that we had our bills paid and things like that. It's tough starting a business. Somebody has to
Right.
be the stable provider, and we didn't have children yet at the time either. So it was a really good risk to take. And he did. He went off and started the business, and then these two other people that he started the business with turned out to be they are lifelong friends. And they didn't have a lot of corporate experience and a lot of organizational experience, which is what I was able to bring to the table. But they had some great ideas on where to take the company. And so after about a year of just kind of being on the sideline and working on the business at night after my corporate job and
Yep.
helping my husband in the background, they eventually said, listen, Julia, like, we need talented people, and we need someone to be a leader of our people. And we're busy everybody's busy doing other things, but no one's leading the people. And so they brought me in. I honestly, like, I left my corporate job kicking and screaming. I said, no, I want to stay in the corporate world. So I went to my corporate job and said, hey, I've got this opportunity to work on my own business with my family, my husband, and partners. What do you say about, me going part-time? They said, sure, absolutely. And then I went back and said, hey, it's not working. I need to get like my hours need to be even more reduced. Yeah. And then I think I need to leave, and then they're like, no, just even more part-time. So, I mean, I was working like several hours a week by the end, and the writing was on the wall that I needed
Yeah.
to completely leave. And so we did. I left and started full time with my company, and it was truly the best decision I could have made as far as my career was concerned. I was able to affect change. I got, like I said, the grit that I was able to grow within myself by being an entrepreneur. And just the people that we hired truly inspired me, and truly those individuals that I got to work with inspired me to go and get my PhD. And so yeah, it was quite wonderful. I do want to tell you about those people.
Yeah.
When we first started the business, we had several people that just needed a job. Like, they just needed a job, and we were like, hey, we just need people. So you don't have to have a PhD. Like, we just need some bodies. We need people to help. And they were like, well, I've got a background. I've been through some things, I've got a record. And we thought, listen, just come. We got you. Don't worry about it. And
Mhm.
then we that started happening more and more. They would tell their friends,
Yeah.
"Hey, you can get hired at this place, even if you've got
Yeah.
a background." And we thought, "All right, well, hey, let's go. Let's do this." And we decided that it was a space. Like we created this space for people that were many from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, people who had uh, records and things like that. There were several moms and dads who were trying to get custody of their children back, and they needed a job. They needed to go to court. I mean, all of these things that we ended up having to work with these employees. But it just provided such a rich experience. And then on the other end, we had people that had masters and PhDs and things like that. And it was just such a beautiful culture to see those people grow. And then that's when I said, man, I want to do work like this. I want to
Yeah.
help build cultures. And how do I do that? I want to be more educated on it. And then I went to get my PhD after that. So,
Yeah. I
yes.
love, love, love that story. And I love the fact that you all found this audience that maybe was untapped and maybe
Mhm.
unserved, because we do know that there are a number of individuals that need a second chance, right?
Right.
And there aren't many employers that are willing to take that risk for a
Mhm.
variety of reasons. And I know that from a
Absolutely.
legislation perspective, there's been a whole lot of people that are kind of pushing for more organizations to be much more thoughtful about the considerations of that. I mean, the bottom line is that we know that a lot of people that may have a record, um, they're still in our communities, they're still in our
Mhm.
society. They want to be able to be gainfully employed and to contribute back to society. And
That's
so
right.
sometimes I've heard someone say once before that the only difference oftentimes between those individuals and maybe the rest of us is that, they got caught, right? and
I,
so
I knew you were going to say that because I say that all the time. They
yes,
got caught.
yes. Yes, and so I do love that you brought that to the conversation. I think that it's kind of this untapped diversity dimension that sometimes
That's
we don't
right.
talk about enough. That's really, really critical. My husband is in transportation logistics, and he also hires a lot of second chancers. And there's a lot of success stories that I could share about that. But we need those organizations, and so kudos to you and your husband and your partners for seeing fit to lean into that and
Yeah.
then reaping the rewards, because it sounds like you were able to create this really solid culture that
Mhm.
has really helped you find your passion and really like your niche within this broader kind of context. And so, so speaking of like organizational culture, you were working right now, Dr. Julia, on a book on the
Yeah.
topic of organizational culture. And so give us a little bit of what we have to look forward to. When will the book
Oh,
release and what
oh
kind of
goodness.
inspired the book? Yeah, share with us, please.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And on that note, on getting my PhD, Dr. Nika White, I wrote in my acknowledgement section.
Sure
If
did.
you're not familiar with the dissertations, at the beginning, well, really at the end, you get an
Yeah.
opportunity to write a kind of an acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge people who have inspired me, professors, friends, family. And I wrote in there that, Dr. Nika White had inspired me because she pretty much like paved the way and gave permission. I didn't know that I needed it, and I didn't need it, but seeing her go off and with a young family at the time, get her
Yeah.
PhD, I just was so inspired, and I thought, wow, I could do it too. I can do it. So thank
And
you
you
for
did
that.
it.
I did it. I did it. Yes, yes. So, and the reason why that I have to start with that is because my book is going to be based upon my dissertation. And whenever I was defending my dissertation, one of my committee members at the end, when I knew that I had done it, he said, "So when's the book coming out about this?" And I thought, "Oh, good, that means I passed, right?" um, so, so yeah, my dissertation was focused on it was a quantitative study. So I did a lot of surveys on organizational culture and how that relates to innovation in small businesses. And
Mhm.
of course, my passion was small businesses because of myself, being a small business owner. At the end, ended up being more of a medium-sized business, but nonetheless, a lot of the same issues and opportunities that small businesses have. And so I knew a lot about that space, and then Texas was where I live, so I studied Texas-based small businesses, and I wanted to know how do small businesses create a culture that gives way to innovation when small businesses don't have a lot of money to just pay for innovation?
Right.
For example, Amazon says, I want to go get in the grocery business. So they bought Whole Foods. I want to go get into the healthcare business. They bought a healthcare
Yeah.
company. They do whatever they want.
Yeah.
They want to be innovative. They just buy it. But small businesses don't really have that. They don't have like the resources usually to just
Right.
go buy a subsidiary.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, how do they do it then? And I thought, well, I looked in the literature, and the literature pointed a lot back to culture. Well, they have to have a culture that kind of refines and puts forth innovation as a priority. And so I wrote about that in my dissertation. And you might be familiar with this. Whenever you're getting if there's any doctoral students on the line now, your committee will try to get the most out of you. And they told me, they kept saying, well, hey, this is great quantitative, but like, what about qualitative? What about a mixed method study where you go and talk to some business owners and truly kind of flesh out some stories? And I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to get this thing done. I didn't want to spend any more
I
time.
remember you and I talked about that. I said, listen, the letters PhD, it's so important, but the
Yeah,
most important letters right now while you're in the midst is DONE. They're
that's
going to throw
right.
everything at you. They want you to look at it 10 different ways, but look, I can do that later. Let me be done.
Right, that's right. And Nika, and we're later now. And so I said, you know what I'll do? I will take my committee's advice and your advice, and just look at it later. And so now what I'm going to be doing is taking my dissertation, using it as a base, but then going out
Yes.
and actually getting some stories and getting some real life examples from small business owners on how they have innovated and how they've gotten to the point that where they are. And so my working title, it's Cultivating Culture, a Blueprint for Leaders. And I'm working with, and this is now that we're in the last little bit of Black History Month, I want to make sure that I shout out a Black owned business. Natara Osborne, who is actually on this call right now, she owns the
Nice.
Infinite Writer, and she is
Mhm.
a book writing coach. She is fantastic. So what she has done, she and I have worked together for several months now. We've been creating an outline, really refining my topics and my chapters. We have 8 chapters outlined, and she is just fantastic. We have like 2-hour calls where I just talk and she kind of like writes, and then she helps me with refining of the outline. She's fantastic, Black owned business. So if you're interested in writing a book, that would be a really great place to start, is getting with a coach, a book writing coach. So she's fantastic. So that's
Well,
where I'm at right now. Yes, go
I
ahead.
love it. Congratulations for having the vision for writing a book. Again, that's not a small feat either, and so I'm so excited for you. I know it's going to be great. I'm so
Thank you.
glad that you have found a great coach and resource to help you with that process. I
Mhm.
love supporting and amplifying Black women who are in business doing things, and so please mention her name again and
Yes,
invite her to share in the chat her information if she wishes for
please
folks in this
do.
community to reach out.
Yes, Nitera Osborne. She is the owner of the
Fantastic.
Infinite Writer. And if I saw her pop in, so I hope
Okay.
that she hears right now, and that she will share. So please share. She
Yes.
is fantastic. She's got a lot of great packages and things like that you can explore with her. But
Wonderful.
absolutely, thanks for that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I've been asked actually a couple times. I just celebrated year 1 of book number 3, and they're like, "Well, when is book number 4 coming?" I'm like, "I don't want to hear that right now." But maybe a year or so from now. But
Oh, I
no, congratulations for having that underway. That's exciting.
Thank you. Well, Nika, I wanted your book. I wanted a signed copy of it. So I remember I sent you a signed
You
a
did.
copy, and then said, "Hey, send it back to me with your signature on it." Like, it is just so
No.
I want to give it to my daughter.
Oh my gosh.
The,
Okay, so let's take a moment to go there. Let's take a moment. And you're so sweet. This is really supposed to be about you and you sharing your story, but you keep interjecting some different ways in which we've been connected. That was one of the most thoughtful things that really was so impressionable for me. And so, again, as Dr. Julia mentioned, she lives in Texas. And so when I released my book, she went and bought her book. She shipped her book to me along with a prepaid package for me to ship it back to her just so that I can sign it. And I just thought that
yes,
was the most amazing show of support. And I was so happy to do it. I think I even did like a LinkedIn live or something about it, or
you
maybe like
did.
a live post, but it was so sweet. So thank you for that support. I
Oh,
too
thank you.
look forward to supporting you.
Thank
And
you.
so we'll have to make sure maybe we bring you back once the book is available.
I would
But
love
we
it.
did have, yeah, we love that. We do have Natira's information that's placed into the chat, her LinkedIn information. And so I hope that you all will also take advantage of seeking her out and understanding what she has available. So now the whole tortilla thing is making sense because, you know, I knew that you were a researcher, but yeah, the depth of how you are connected to just like research
Love it.
is bringing us full circle. So I'm so glad that you're using all of those skill sets, even if it is for finding the perfect tortilla chip, as well
Mhm.
as being able to add value to this book that you have underway right now. That's fantastic. So I want to shift a bit and I want to talk about the coaching that you do, because I know that's also one of your passion points. It's also something that you are trained in, you have a lot of experience in it, and you're continuing to get some additional credentials to help you in that regard. But how do you specifically approach executive coaching? And I would love for you to talk about it in the sense of how do you blend and embed a lens of DEI into executive coaching?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, that's it's so special to me, that question, because a lot of the clients that I get truly have issues that come from a diversity, equity, and inclusion problem.
Right.
And I don't put my you know, as far as my credentials on my website or on my LinkedIn, that I am an expert in DEI, but just by way of who I am, people are drawn to me in that way, and they think, "Hey, she might be able to talk about this with me." As a woman, as a Black woman, and it's just so special that I get to navigate that with people.
Mm.
And one of the ways that I've been working in this idea of conscious leadership lately, and one of the things that I focus on is this idea of taking 100% responsibility. And that doesn't mean like I take responsibility for myself and myself only. It means not taking responsibility for other people's stuff. So
Wow.
taking 50% responsibility would look something like, I'm a victim. Everything happens to me. I don't have any control. I'm sitting back. I just I don't know. You know, that's kind of 50% responsibility. 150% responsibility, though, is shouldering and taking on more than is necessary, and is you know, placating for other people. And what happens when you do that, when you take 150% responsibility versus the 100, is you take that away from other people. You don't allow them space to deal with the things that they need to deal with, especially when it comes to DE&I. If
Right.
we bring up an issue, let's say, and then a person says, okay, well, I'm really sorry about that, and then we say, oh, it's okay, it's no big deal. Well, we just took away the opportunity for them to go work on that, by saying, it's fine, don't worry about it. No, I want you to. I want you to go and do your own work and be better. You know, that's giving that person responsibility to do that. And a lot of times, especially women, and Black women in particular, we take on a lot when it's not our responsibility. It's not my responsibility to go and make other people feel comfortable about whatever it is, especially when it comes to DEI issues. So that's
Yeah.
one of the things.
I love that. So well stated. I'm going to paraphrase here and make it plain. Own your stuff.
Own your stuff.
Own your stuff. That's what I'm hearing. Own your stuff. No, but I
Yeah.
love that. And you're right. I think that one of the values of coaching that maybe not a lot of people fully appreciate is that it is very individualized. And so
Mhm.
during those coaching sessions, you aren't trying to necessarily talk about what someone else should be doing or why they didn't
Mhm.
do this. It is
Yep.
focused on you and you only, because that is what we can control ourselves. And
That's
so,
right.
a coaching oriented type of training and upskilling is really valuable in that regard, because I do think that it forces us to accept ownership and full accountability for how we're showing up and the things that we can control.
Yeah.
And so that's really critical. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to be shifting in a little bit, but I do want to make the audience aware that we're going to give you a chance to present your questions, comments. So if there's some curiosities that are coming up for you, hold those in mind, and I will allow you to share. If you're part of our Zoom community, you can do that by using the raise hand feature, which lets me know that you're willing for me to invite you to unmute yourself, and I will add you to the spotlight. Or if you just want to place maybe your questions or comments into the chat, we certainly welcome that as well. If you're part of our LinkedIn Live community and you have questions or comments, place them into the chat. We're bringing all of that over into this chat community in Zoom so that we can be one big, happy collaborative as we are engaged in this conversation. So while you're still percolating, I'm going to go to the next question. And I want to talk about this concept of Black magic, right? Um, this is part of like the messaging that normally you like to speak to. So I would love to give you the platform to talk about that.
Mhm.
So can you delve deeper into the concept of Black magic as discussed specifically in Chad Sanders' book, Black Magic, What Black Leaders Learned from Trauma and Triumph? How do Black individuals leverage their experiences and resilience as a source of strength?
Mm, I just love those words, honestly. I was in the car. I love listening to interviews, talk radio, like NPR. I love the NPR interviews. This guy, Chad Sanders, was on an interview, and he was talking about his book, promoting his book. And I kind of got in the middle of the interview, but I just heard this man talking about the idea that Black people have this kind of inherent skill when it comes to emotional intelligence, when it comes to resilience, when it comes to being able to read the room, all of these things. And it comes from our experiences just existing in a
Yeah.
excuse me, in a white world. And I
Mhm.
thought, what is he talking about? That is what I'm saying. I love that. Like I love this. And so, my research brain just went wild, and I thought I have to learn everything about this guy. I love what he's doing. I love what he's talking about. And so I got his book, and I should have sent it to him to get a signed copy. I should have done the same thing. Um, but I got his book, and he's been on several podcasts. But here's the idea of Black magic. Basically, he talked about how, and this is how in my experience as well, when we are growing up as a Black person, we experience so many things, so many microaggressions, so many injustices, so many just atrocities, honestly.
Mhm.
And we can use those to our advantage, but we have to cultivate them. We have to know that they're there. And so, for example, one of the examples that came to mind for me was whenever I was in high school. I remember lying about where my dad was. My dad was in prison, and
Mm.
I didn't want people to know that. I was quite embarrassed about that, or lying about where my parents worked, and that they didn't have great, in my opinion at the time, great
Mhm.
professional lawyer, doctor, CEO jobs. So I didn't tell the full truth about what my parents did. I wanted to assimilate. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like the people that were in the groups that I was in, and many times those people were white individuals, and their parents weren't, at my school anyway. Their parents weren't, working as a clerk at a grocery store, or working, or in prison. So I wanted to assimilate so bad, and
Yeah.
this is what Chad Sanders talks about in his book too. So what happens when we do that, though, when we don't own our story? we forget that we have so much power in that, and we don't use it. And so, instead of me saying like I'm a kid whose dad was in jail, how about I'm a kid who was able to navigate the world without a father for most of the time. I know him. I know who he is. I mean, he's around now. He's fine. But at that time, in those formative years, I didn't have that like the next person. Or for example, just having teachers having low expectations of me as a middle schooler or high schooler, truly because I was just Black. That's not something that most white kids have to deal with. How do I overcome that? What did I use to overcome that? How did I just keep going to school every day, knowing that my teachers didn't expect much of me? And another one would just be bodily safety. Like walking outside and knowing that like I could be accosted, and questioned because of because of me, walking through a dark alley with a hoodie on. Like
Right.
that could happen to me. It truly could
Yeah.
happen. It's not hypothetical. And so how do you get along in life with all of those things, carrying all of those things, and then go to work and go to a boardroom and start talking and being a normal person? It is it's awful, but I just don't think that a lot of people can do that. And I think those experiences of Black people, we can do that. We do have that
Mhm.
power. We have the emotional intelligence from our experiences. We have the grit, the resilience from our experiences of just existing. And we can use those in boardrooms, in places, in entrepreneurship, in whatever. And I think that what Chad's book has taught me, and I learned it long ago before reading the book, but he just articulates it so well,
Yeah.
is that there's magic in our experiences, and there's magic in kind of truly, living out those things that aren't fair and that are awful. There's magic in saying, you know what, though, I'm gonna use this to my advantage, and here we are. So that's one
Yeah.
of the things I love about his book, and all of the research that he did to write that book.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued now. So I want to give the full title of the book again. I did place the short title into the chat, but it's Chad Sanders,
Mhm,
Black Magic and What Black Leaders Learned from Trauma and Triumph. And what
mhm.
kept coming up for me as you were sharing this story that really I was intrigued by is what I said before: own your stuff,
Mhm.
right? Let's not shy away from it. Let's own our full stories. Now, that is different from letting that information define us,
That's
but
right.
let's own it.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing is that, and I'm going to get the book because now I'm so intrigued by this message, and I see why it certainly resonated with you, and you felt this passion to want to, dig deeper. There's some criticism around the whole Black magic, kind of
Mhm.
Black excellence connotation right now. But what I'm hearing is that what Chad Sanders was attempting to do in this book is to allow us to see it as something that could work to our benefit. Not that we have to be superhuman, but let it
Absolutely.
work to our benefit. Because there is like this full movement right now around rest as a form of resistance. It's part of how we need to help ourselves to feel liberated. As Black individuals, and it's also a part of how we need to be really mindful of our well-being and radical self-care and all the things, right? And so I just wanted to take an opportunity to bring that to the conversation, because I do know that when we hear words like Black magic and Black
Mhm.
excellence, it automatically
Yeah,
can put us into that space. But
absolutely.
I love this notion of again, kind of owning your stuff, telling your story, not shying away from it, is part of
Yeah,
what has shaped us. And I also
that's right.
love the reframe that it provides for us to um, have a greater appetite to lean more into sharing that information about ourselves, not
Mhm.
because it's defining us, but because it is part of that ownership. And I think that part of being free to be authentic is to be able to own that. And so
Absolutely.
that is beautiful.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
I think, yes, I'm seeing that we have placed a link to the book into the chat. And so I'm definitely going
Good.
to be ordering that book. So thank you for introducing it to this community. For
Mhm.
those of you who don't know Chad Sanders, it sounds like this is going to be a good resource for many of us. Okay, so I'm not seeing any hands raised right now, so I'm going to keep moving because I have lots of questions. But again, just want to remind you, if something is coming up for you and you would love to communicate those curiosities or those comments, then use the raise hand feature or let's go to the chat and I will be sure to let your voice be heard. So I want to talk about leadership now. What role do you believe, Julia, that leadership plays in fostering a more inclusive and supportive workplace culture?
All the roles, everything.
All the
It's
roles, all
everything.
the things,
Yes,
A to Z.
everything.
I know. I often
Yeah.
say DEI is leadership. So why are we
Yes.
separating the two? But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's I, I love this question because there's six things that research says that like leaders do to actually create culture. One of them is just kind of what they pay attention to. What are they looking at? How do they respond to critical events or critical incidents? How
Yes.
they allocate resources, how they allocate rewards and status, how they recruit, how they select, how they promote, and then truly just deliberate role modeling. Just these are the things that what leaders do to create a culture. And what I think some leaders forget is that when there's an opportunity to do something and they don't, that's part of it too. It's not just what you do, it's what you don't do as
That's what you
well.
don't do. Yes.
And so I think, and that's where coaching can kind of come in and help with those blind spots, kind of challenging you on those things. But yeah, it's a lot of what you don't do as well. And so, for example, creating an inclusive environment means having a connection with a person and hearing what their lived experiences are and how those lived experiences shape who they are.
Right.
It's truly about personal connection, because the story that I just shared about my upbringing and things like that, that we are both Black women with doctoral level education. That might not be your same story though. Like I don't think
Yeah.
so. Honestly, I don't think it is. And so but on paper we look very similar. And
Mhm.
I think that is that is truly the key when it comes to leadership, is getting to know the people, getting to know them, and having empathy and saying, okay, what about your lived experience are you bringing to the table today, and or to this workspace, and how can we use that, almost kind of like the black magic? How do we use those experiences? How do we continue to cultivate that? It truly is about a personal connection, and if any leader tells me that they don't have time for that, I mean, you don't have time for a successful company. You don't have time for high
Yeah.
margins. You don't have time for profit if you don't have time to connect with your employees.
Yeah. No, that is so good. That is so, so good. And I do believe that there is a higher calling and larger responsibility that has unearthed on leaders since the DEI conversation has increased. And it's because it has placed the emphasis on the importance of that individualization when you are managing and leading and coaching and mentoring people. The one size fits all, which is the convenient, easy way, it no longer works. It
It
does
doesn't.
take rolling up your sleeves, really building and cultivating those individual relationships so that you are managing to the strengths of those individuals, which could look vastly different from the next person.
Yeah,
And, I often say that this work is dressed in overalls and it looks like work is because it is. So
that's
all of
right.
those who are raising their hand to say, yes, put me in, coach. I want to be a leader. I want to be a leader. You have to count the cost. What does that mean exactly?
That's
And are
right.
you really prepared for that? And so I so love that you have brought that to the conversation. I think that is critical. I want you to mention the six elements again. And I'm not sure if
Sure.
you're referencing something, but they were really, really good. I especially love the
Yes.
one about how you respond to critical events, because I
Yes.
think that one is one that is missed most often. We have had a
Mhm.
lot of complex social issues that have found its way into the four walls of every organization, whether or not people realize it or not, because it's impacting us outside of the four walls. And of course, we
Absolutely.
can't just separate that. And what's happening is that a lot of individuals are feeling like, leaders are feeling like that's not my place. I shouldn't have a perspective or a role, or, that's outside of the workplace. But what you said was that it is very important for leaders to give voice and acknowledge,
Mhm.
critical events. And so I want you to read those six again because I thought they were
Sure,
really good.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I hope none of my professors are on right now because I actually wrote a note here, and let me tell you, these are things I'm supposed to know up here. But I've got a 22-month-old, so he takes most of that brain power away. But
Listen,
I'll
lots
be
of grace
honest.
with this community, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that on behalf of all of your professors who could maybe hear this today or later. Yes, grace, grace, grace.
Right, right. So there are six culture embedding mechanisms. There's a man named Shine. He's like the culture, you know, king. He talks. He's done all the research. Anyway, what leaders pay attention to is the first one. How leaders react to critical incidents or organizational crises, even.
Mhm.
How leaders allocate resources. So you say you want DEI, but you're not giving any resources to DEI. You say you want, you say it's important, but there's no resources, that have been allocated. How leaders allocate rewards and status. That's a huge one
Yeah,
when it comes to well, actually the next one actually, how leaders recruit,
motion.
select, promote, and fire as
Yep.
well. When leaders
Mhm.
promote people of color and minorities into higher level positions that are able to make change. As a young professional, I saw that. I didn't see that actually in real life, but I would see that, and
Yeah.
if that were to happen, that wow, people like me are getting promoted. That's amazing. I don't have to assimilate. I could just be myself. And then the last one is deliberate role modeling. Just you say you want everybody to go to the DEI training, but then you don't go. It's things like that.
I love it. Those are so, so, so rich. And so thank you so much for going back through each of those. Okay, so I want to talk about employee feedback.
Mhm.
And I think this is why there's such a huge need for coaches, particularly coaches that specialize in providing support to underrepresented, underserved, underestimated, historically marginalized individuals within the workplace. And it is because sometimes people fear giving the critical, constructive feedback to those individuals because they don't want to be perceived as being overcritical. They don't want to
Yeah.
be perceived as being biased. But that creates harm for us as well because it's like, well, we're not getting the feedback we need to be able to get ahead, to be able to have that upward mobility. And so here's my question, Dr. Julia.
Hmm.
Employee feedback can oftentimes include coded language that disproportionately affects people of color.
Hmm.
How can organizations ensure that feedback is equitable and constructive? And let
Mm.
me just say this
Hmm.
quickly. I cannot tell you how many times in my professional career I have had white male leaders at the C suite level to come to me to say, "I have this person that has great potential, and I would love, love, love if you could coach and mentor them."
Hmm.
And what they're saying to me is that I don't believe anybody in my organization is equipped to do that. And I see that as a problem.
Yep.
So anyway, enlighten us,
Yes.
please, Dr.
Yes.
Julia.
That's awesome. I there was there's a board I was on that we talked about. We need more DEI. We were going to be writing grants, and they wanted to more grants that we wanted to like basically write in the grants that we focused on DE&I. So they looked over at me as the only Black person on the board as a person that could like kind of co-lead this committee. And I said, you know what I think? I think it would be fantastic if you guys did it, because because
Uh-oh, silence in the
oh
room.
yeah, maybe you guys should lead the efforts on what makes us great in DE&I, because your perspective is probably gonna, I mean, I'm trying to just like butter them up to maybe you take it, because it's not always my responsibility to lift up DE&I. It should be everybody's responsibility. I've definitely put that back on somebody else. So absolutely, unless I want to, and then I will. But so here's the thing when it comes to giving employee feedback. This question is interesting because I had a coach, or sorry, a coachee, a client who was getting feedback about how he was, his personality had the capability to kind of make or break the room when it came to meetings. A
Yeah.
Black man, and he said, I kind of felt like they saw me as like the entertainment or something. You know, why is it that
Mm.
my why is it that
The
my
hype man.
personality, yeah, why am I a clown? Like, why is it that
Oh,
I have
stop. No, I'm sorry, but yeah, this is what's so tickling to me. These examples, while it seems probably maybe outlandish to some who are hearing this, these are things that we hear a lot.
every
We
day?
hear a lot. Yes. I'm not
Yeah,
here to entertain you. I'm here to work.
that's
Okay,
right.
keep going. I'm
That's
sorry. Keep
right.
going, Dr.
And so
Julia.
and here's where we go back to that 150%. I, you know, coach my client on that's 150%. That's not you being in, like you said, I'm here to work. That's the 100%. You are not here to entertain and to keep the morale up amongst the team, you know, unless that is, you know, unless he wasn't in a leadership role in this particular context. But that is not your responsibility. And so for leaders, I kind of coach them on, you know, being honest and you know, uplifting people of color and those who are historically marginalized, by giving them the honest feedback, but
Yeah.
also being careful in the language that you use and truly checking yourself and making sure that there's this thing called kind of clearing your chart, kind of clearing what you're thinking before you're going into this meeting. What biases do I have? Kind of check yourself. Where, you know, how might this sound? Just being honest, just saying, hey, these are some things that I'm noticing, and asking for feedback. And here's the thing: when you, as a leader, and you're asking for feedback on, you know, like, how did that comment make you feel, or what have you, when the person of color or marginalized individual, historically marginalized individual, says that made me feel bad, I didn't like that, or what have you, that's the time to be quiet and to say, tell me more about that. It's not the time
Yeah.
to have excuses and the time to say, well, I didn't mean it that way,
Or
or
defend, or yeah.
defend. Exactly. So that's a coaching, something that all of us need help on. But when it comes
Yeah.
to these delicate conversations, I'd usually coach just, hey, that's the time to ask, how can I be of more of assistance? What can I do differently? Not the time to defend. So that's a
I
hard muscle
totally
to
agree.
flex, but
It
it
is.
is
It takes
something too.
practice.
It
And we
does.
have to use those muscles in order to get better at it. So yeah, that is really sage advice. You know, I heard you say that language matters. And so it
It
does.
does.
Language matters, tone matters.
Tone.
And let's say this too. If the relationship is solid to where you know that on occasions you may have to have a delicate conversation,
Mhm.
then usually the trust is there because the bank account has been built up. But if you're making withdrawals every single day because you aren't practicing emotional intelligence, you aren't, you know, really leveraging and exercising your muscle of cultural intelligence and humility to understand more
Right.
about the differences between maybe your demographic lived experiences and the other person, then it's going to be easy for you to have a lot of withdrawals where really what you want is a pretty solid bank account so that when you have to have that conversation, because constructive feedback is necessary and everyone needs it.
That's
Everyone
right.
needs it. I cannot tell you how many times I hear a lot of historically marginalized professionals to say, all of the performance reviews said that I'm doing great, I'm doing great, I'm doing great. But then I was overlooked for that promotion. I
That's right.
didn't get assigned to that, you know, high visible kind of project or you know, initiative. And it's like, what am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. People are just not giving you the feedback that you need. So
That's right.
specificity is also really, really critical. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so thank you. You are shedding some really important light on many important topics. So I do want to go back to the individual that you mentioned. Someone in our LinkedIn community was questioning, what is the name again? Was it Sheen or Shine? I believe it
Oh,
was. Someone
Shine.
wants you.
It's
Okay.
yes, SCH. It's actually I think it's the same name as that clothing company. Sheen, Shine. Um,
Oh, EIN.
yeah. Yeah, Edgar Shine. He actually unfortunately passed away last year, in very, very old age, but he is the leading sociologist, psychologist on organizational culture. Edgar Schein, there he is, right there.
Okay, great. I just placed into the chat. So thanks for getting clarification on that to our LinkedIn friend who wanted to have you repeat that. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we have 2 minutes left. We're running out of time. I feel like this conversation could go on for like
Oh
another
yeah.
hour, but we're gonna have to invite you back once the book is released because I
Yes.
know it's going to be great, and I know that we're going to gain a lot of value from hearing a little bit more about it. But I want to give you the opportunity to close us out in whatever way that feels appropriate to you. So if there's something that I have not asked you about, Dr. Julia, that you have a lot of energy and passion for, that you want to socialize with this community, I want to give you that chance to do so to close this out. Before I release you to do that, just want to thank you again for saying yes to our invitation, for being here, for your leadership, for your light that you're providing to so many people through your work that you're doing. And I also want to thank this community for showing up week after week and for engaging with us today. If you found this content to be useful, then when the replay comes out, certainly share it, suggest it with someone in your network. And remember, we also have a podcast that's going to be available as well. So close us out, Dr. Julia.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Nika. There is one last thing I'd like to share. I had a potential client reach out. We had a initial conversation, and at the end, I asked her, what made her want to choose me as her coach. It's great research for a person who's starting a business. And she said, on a different group that we were in together, I loved how you were vulnerable and you shared your story of loss, and you were handling grief, and children, and getting your PhD. And she said, I really appreciated how vulnerable you were, and that made me want you to be my coach. And what I want to just leave everybody with is, there is strength in vulnerability. There is strength
Mhm.
in being who you are and living out, and owning, like Nika said, owning who you are. There is strength in that. And whatever it is that you've been through, if it's a loss of some sort, or if you're going through something, if your spouse is going through something, talk about it. Talk about it with people. You never know who is going to want to connect with you for that, and want to hire you as their coach, or even just want to shed light onto your situation. So for far too long, up until I experienced a great loss, I wanted to be seen as just perfect and everything's great. But until I experienced a great loss that I couldn't hide, from. I started truly like kind of living my life, and I just want to give that to others: is be vulnerable and live.
What a great way to end. So inspirational. Thank you so very much.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
have a great and safe weekend. We'll see you back here next week for Intentional Conversations podcast. Bye bye.
Bye.